It's a Monday in Los Angeles, February 24th, 1986. The sun is bright, the street is quiet, and inside a top-floor condo, a brand-new marriage is starting its ordinary week. Coffee, quick goodbyes, a couple of errands planned for the afternoon. By evening, the plan will be gone, and the crime scene techs will be counting shell casings on a white carpet. Sherry Rasmussen is 29, a hospital nursing supervisor known for being calm under pressure. That morning, her husband heads to work. Sherry stays home, not feeling great. Late afternoon, he returns to something that doesn't make sense. The front door shows damage, furniture is knocked over, and a glass sliding door is shattered. Inside the bedroom, he finds Sherry. The first 911 call is chaotic and short. LAPD arrives fast. Detectives note a ransacked appearance. Drawers open, jewelry boxes tipped, a VCR missing, because in 1986, that's apparently what burglars collect. There are blunt force injuries and gunshot wounds. 3 rounds were fired from a .38. There's also something else. An injury to the forearm consistent with a bite. It's documented, photographed, and swabbed. Evidence bagged, labels filled out, scene released. The working theory that night is simple and, on the surface, logical. A burglary interrupted, a struggle, a panicked killer fleeing with whatever they grabbed. So, case solved? Not even close. The burglary explanation will make a lot of noise early, and then get very quiet for a very long time. Detectives canvass the neighborhood. 2 separate burglaries have been reported in the area. That lines up nicely. The shattered slider suggests forced entry. The mess inside suggests a search. When a story fits the puzzle pieces, people tend to stop looking for more pieces. That's human nature. And in the mid-'80s, there's no DNA database to argue back. For months, the file fattens with tips that go nowhere. The bite mark swab, preserved, logged, and sealed in storage. The case gradually cools. Sherry's family keeps pushing for updates. The answers are mostly, "We're working it." Years pass, then decades. Meanwhile, technology refuses to stay in 1986. It's not polite like that. By the 2000s, cold case units have a new favorite phrase: "Let's test it." Old evidence is quietly turning into brand new leads all over the country. In this case, someone takes another look at that swab from the bite. The sample is still viable. A lab runs it through modern DNA analysis. The result is clear. The biter was female. That single word jolts the file awake. The original 2 male burglars theory doesn't die, but it's suddenly on life support. Detectives reread every report. They re-walk the crime scene in their heads. They reconsider the things that looked like burglary and ask whether they could have been staged. They audit who had reason, who had access, who had time, and who left behind biology that landed on Sherry's arm. From here, the reinvestigation stops being about guesses and starts being about paperwork, timelines, and people whose stories either hold or crack. They reconstruct February 24th down to the hour. Phone calls, work logs, neighbors who heard glass, a possible muffled argument, the sequence of 3 shots. They chart the condo's entry points, note the position of the shell casings, and the odd placement of selected stolen items. They review Sherry's autopsy and the physical evidence, the angle of impact, the struggle signs, and that bite. Close quarters, personal, not a random smash-and-grab signature. The new question becomes, who was close enough to Sherry to fight at that distance? Who would risk a midday confrontation in a residential building? And who, years later, could still be tied to the scene by DNA No theories on the mic, just tests in the lab. Investigators identify a short list of people who intersected with Sherry's life. Each name is vetted the boring way. Employment records, travel, phone logs. Quiet surveillance is set up on one individual. Detectives need fresh DNA the legal way, so they wait. A discarded item, something with saliva, is collected from a public place. A lab compares it to the bite mark profile. It's a match. At that moment, the case vaults from what if to we know. The arrest will be careful and by the book. The news will stun people who thought they'd seen everything. In 2009, Los Angeles detectives arrested Stephanie Lazarus, an LAPD officer, for the 1986 murder of Sherry Rasmussen. The DNA from the bite matched Lazarus. A search warrant on Lazarus's home and workspace produced additional evidence tying her to the case. In 2012, after a full jury trial, Lazarus was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. So the file that once read probable burglary gone wrong became something else entirely. A long marriage of good evidence and bad assumptions finally ended by a single preserved swab and a lab that could hear what it had been trying to say since 1986. The ransacked rooms? Jurors heard they could be staged. The missing electronics? Convenient noise. The shattered glass? An entry? Yes, but also a narrative that people accepted too easily because it matched other crimes nearby. The bite mark swab, meticulously collected, quietly stored, was the piece that never aged. When science caught up, the story had to change. Sherry's family, who never stopped asking for a real answer, finally got one. With names, dates, and a courtroom that agreed. Cases don't close themselves. People do. Sometimes they need better tools. Sometimes they just need the patience to admit the first idea wasn't the right one. Here, it took both. A careful evidence tech in 1986, and a cold case team decades later, willing to reopen a door everyone thought was already shut. What shocked you most about this case? The decades-old swab solving it, or how convincing a staged scene can look? And second question, how many burglary files from the past are actually waiting for a lab to translate what the evidence has been saying all along? It's a warm June morning in 1996. In Idaho Falls, the kind where sunlight hits every front porch at once and nothing feels out of place. A coworker knocks on 20-year-old Angie Dodge's apartment door after she doesn't show up for work. No answer. She calls out again. Still silence. She pushes the door open and steps into a scene that will define this small town for decades. Inside, police find a brutal murder. Angie is gone. The apartment shows signs of a violent struggle. Detectives collect everything: fingerprints, hair, and, most important, biological evidence. The entire town goes on edge. Crimes like this don't happen here. Neighbors are interviewed, co-workers questioned, family devastated. Within days, the case becomes the top story in Idaho. Within weeks, detectives focus on a local man named Christopher Tapp. He's 20, anxious, and easily intimidated. After hours of interrogation and multiple versions of his story, Tapp finally signs a confession. The details don't fit perfectly, but there's pressure to close the case, and a confession looks good on paper. In 1998, Tapp is convicted of Angie's murder and sentenced to 30 years to life. Justice, everyone thinks, is served. Except the DNA from the crime scene doesn't match Christopher Tapp. The state argues maybe he had an accomplice, but no other suspect fits, and that single mismatch sits there like a splinter for 20 years. Angie's mother, Carol Dodge, refuses to accept it. She meets with anyone who will listen: reporters, attorneys, and even the Idaho Innocence Project. 2 decades pass. DNA technology changes everything about criminal investigation. Labs can now build family trees from tiny genetic clues. Investigators reopen the Dodge case and submit the old DNA sample to a private genealogy service. Within months, they get hits. Distant relatives scattered across the country. A web of names appears, and one stands out: Brian Lee Dripps Sr., who once lived across the street from Angie Dodge in 1996. Detectives quietly check old city records. Sure enough, Dripps was there, in an apartment facing Angie's building. He'd been questioned briefly back then, but cleared because, well, the case already had a confession. He moved away, started over, raised a family, built a life. Now, a cold case team begins surveillance. They follow Dripps for weeks, waiting for him to discard something with DNA. One night, he tosses a cigarette butt. It's collected, sealed, tested. When the lab calls back, the match is exact. The DNA from the cigarette is identical to the sample collected from Angie's apartment 23 years earlier. Detectives fly to Caldwell, Idaho. Dripps is arrested outside his home. During questioning, he confesses calmly, clearly, to killing Angie Dodge. He says it was an accident. Investigators write every word. In 2021, after serving 20 years for a crime he didn't commit, Christopher Tapp is officially exonerated. The same technology that caught the real killer cleared the innocent man. Brian Dripps pleads guilty to first-degree murder and rape and is sentenced to life in prison. One woman's refusal to stop asking questions rewrote the story of an entire investigation. Carol Dodge pushed for the very technology that proved her daughter's killer and freed the wrongfully convicted. The case became a national example of why evidence never expires, only the tools to read it do. So after 23 years, the truth was finally across the street the whole time. What shocks you most about this one? The DNA that cleared an innocent man, or the idea that the real killer watched investigators chase the wrong person for 2 decades? Tell me below what you think justice really looks like when time does the investigating. Before we move to the next case, we want to take a moment to acknowledge Chris Tapp, the man who was wrongfully convicted in Angie Dodge's case. After finally clearing his name and reclaiming his freedom, Chris sadly passed away in 2023. His story is a powerful reminder of the human cost of injustice since It's a Cold December Morning in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 1992. Frost on the lawns, Christmas lights still blinking from the night before. Inside a small townhouse on William Street, 25-year-old schoolteacher Christy Marak is running late for work. She teaches 6th grade at Rohrerstown Elementary, and her students adore her. When she doesn't show up, her friend and co-worker, worried, drives over to check. At 9 a.m., she knocks. No answer. She calls out, pushes the door open, and freezes. The living room is in chaos. A toppled table, books scattered, a broken Christmas ornament glinting on the carpet. Christie is inside, brutally murdered. Detectives arrive within minutes. It's one of the most violent crime scenes Lancaster has ever seen. Police collect everything: fibers, fingerprints, and crucially, DNA. But in 1992, DNA analysis is in its infancy. It's enough to prove someone was there, but not enough to say who. Investigators are left with a profile and no database to compare it to. They question everyone: neighbors, co-workers, ex-boyfriends, delivery drivers. Christie's routine was predictable: school, gym, home. And she had no known enemies. Within weeks, every lead dries up. The case grows cold almost instantly, filed away among unsolved homicides. For years, the photo of Christie smiling in her classroom reappears in the local paper every Christmas. Each year, detectives promise they're still working it. Each year, the trail gets colder. By the early 2000s, the file is thick with dead ends. Still, the biological evidence, meticulously sealed, remains. When new technology allows full genetic sequencing, the Lancaster County DA's office resubmits it. A complete male DNA profile is built, and compared to every offender in CODIS, no match. 2 more decades slip by. The case is reopened again in 2016 by a new cold case unit. They partner with a private lab using genetic genealogy, the same breakthrough method that will soon catch the Golden State Killer. The lab uploads Christie's unknown DNA to a public ancestry database. A few weeks later, hits appear, not to a suspect, but to distant cousins spread across Pennsylvania. Specialists start building a family tree backward from those relatives. The web of names slowly tightens until one branch points toward a man who once lived right in Lancaster. Raymond Rowe, known to most people as DJ Freeze. He isn't a drifter or a felon. He's local celebrity material. Rowe plays weddings, school dances, and community fundraisers. He's photographed with kids, smiles in every picture. He's married, owns a house, runs a business, and he's been right there the whole time. Investigators quietly surveil him for weeks, waiting for something he discards. In May 2018, during a charity event at an elementary school, they collect a half-empty water bottle and a piece of used chewing gum. Both go to the lab. Days later, the phone call comes in. The DNA is an exact match to the profile from Christie Marak's townhouse. 26 years after the murder, the key finally turns. Detectives move in carefully. Rowe is arrested without incident. When confronted, he doesn't deny being there. He just says nothing that makes sense. Prosecutors later describe the crime as a sudden, opportunistic attack. No clear motive has ever been confirmed. In 2019, Raymond Rowe pleads guilty to first-degree murder, rape, and burglary. The plea spares Christie's family the trial they've already endured in their minds for 2 decades. He's sentenced to life in prison without parole. At sentencing, Christie's brother speaks directly to him. "You've lived your life free while ours stopped that morning." Reporters note Rowe shows no emotion. For the investigators who stayed on this case for most of their careers, it's proof that patience matters as much as technology. Every piece of evidence collected in 1992, the fibers, the fingerprints, the DNA, became the roadmap once science caught up. For 26 years, the man who murdered Christie Marak stood behind a turntable at community events, playing songs for the same people who were searching for a killer. Sitting in a freezer all along waiting for the right technology to speak? Tell me below what part of this case hit you hardest. because sometimes justice doesn't arrive late. It just waits for the right tools to show. What shocks you most? That he was the local DJ everyone trusted, or that the answer was up? It's the evening of April 15, 1992, in Agawam, Massachusetts, a quiet town where most people still leave their doors unlocked. 24-year-old Lisa Ziegert has two jobs. By day, she's a beloved middle school art teacher. By night, she works part-time at a gift shop called Brittany's Card and Gift. At 9 p.m., she should have locked up and gone home. But the next morning, the shop lights are still on. The front door is unlocked. The cash drawer is open, a small amount of money missing. Lisa's car sits out front. Her purse, keys, and jacket are still inside. Her co-workers call police immediately. To everyone who knows her, the unlocked door means one thing: something went wrong inside that store. Detectives find clear signs of a struggle. Merchandise scattered, a display stand toppled. They collect fingerprints, shoe prints, and fibers, and notice traces of blood behind the counter. Within hours, search teams spread across the wooded areas near town. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, the entire community joins. For 4 days, there's nothing. Then, on April 19th, a jogger spots something off a dirt road in nearby Suffield, Connecticut, about 4 miles from the shop. It's Lisa. She's been murdered. The scene is handled carefully. Tire impressions are cast. Fibers and DNA are preserved. The FBI joins the case, but 1992 forensic tech is limited. All they can do is store and label the evidence. The trail runs cold before it even starts. Agawam detectives never close the file. Over the next decade, dozens of tips come in. None lead anywhere solid. They question drifters, ex-boyfriends, anyone seen near the gift shop. Nothing matches. Still, in a freezer at the state crime lab, the DNA profile from Lisa's attacker waits. Clear, testable, but unclaimed. Every few years, it's rerun against the growing national database. Each time, the result is the same. No match. Lisa's family refuses to let her memory fade. They hold vigils, plant memorial trees, and remind the public that her killer is still out there. By 2016, the case is 24 years old. A new generation of detectives takes over, and they have something their predecessors didn't: forensic genealogy. The cold case unit partners with Parabon Nanolabs, the same company solving long-forgotten murders nationwide. The lab builds a detailed genetic profile from the preserved evidence and uploads it to a public ancestry database. Weeks later, they hit on distant relatives in the system. A genealogist begins piecing together a family tree that leads straight to western Massachusetts. One name appears near the center of that tree: Gary Earl Schroeder, a local man who once lived just a few miles from the gift shop. He worked in construction, had a record for minor offenses, and in the early 90s was questioned briefly about another assault, but never charged. Investigators learned Schroeder died in 2016, 2 years before the new DNA work even began. Still, that doesn't stop them. They petition for a court order to exhume his body. The exhumation is performed quietly at a small cemetery in Hampton County. DNA from Schroeder's remains is compared to the sample collected from Lisa Ziegert's case. The match is absolute. Probability of error: less than 1 in several trillion. After 26 years, the case that haunted Agawam finally has a name. The suspect had been dead the whole time, buried less than 20 miles away. At a 2017 press conference, Massachusetts State Police announced the results. Detectives who worked the original scene stand alongside those who finished it. One officer says softly, We always believed the evidence would speak. We just had to wait until we could understand the language. Lisa's parents thank investigators and the community, saying closure isn't the same as peace, but it's a start.